Welcome to
Cup
El Café
reading with
de la
the
Vida
flower
with
girl.
the Flower Girl.
Coffee cup reading.
Hello. So this is actually a coffee cup reading that I accidentally erased. I accidentally erased two. It was a misunderstanding between my app and my phone. Um, so first things first, this is actually flipped. So because the video is mirrored right now, so the elephant should be here and this one is over here. So the elephant represents the future of human evolution, and the elephant we have here is both represent wisdom as well, but also is Ganesha from Hindu mythology. So because it's a god from Hindu mythology, that is a culture that was developed more during a time. It's more of an echo of a time that, at least the emergence of the culture, uh, it was developed during a time where the human consciousness was affected. Of course, we're always affected by the universal consciousness, and that universal consciousness was more, or the way we were affected, we were affected more by the feminine aspect of that consciousness. If we want to speak about it in dual term as masculine and feminine, the consciousness that was experienced then was what we call more feminine one, which makes sense with what we are going through right now, which is that we are changing. We're going from one cycle to the next, from one consciousness to the next. So we are in this moment of transition, and the next cycle that we are, if this is the old cycle and this is the new one, and we have been going to these transitions, and these are like hundreds and thousands of years that these transitions go along. But as we enter the new consciousness, it's actually a more feminine consciousness. So we have been going through a masculine, usually, at least in the West, we call it the Piscean age, has been under the consciousness have been under the archetype, to the Piscean archetype. So the masculine consciousness was expressing itself through the Piscean archetype, and in the second half of that, we were all also integrating the shadow of that archetype and the shadow of the masculine. And now we're entering a feminine age again, where the consciousness is affected by more feminine impulses, the more feminine impulses of the universal consciousness, humanity, and we enter the Aquarian consciousness as well. It's under the archetype of Aquarius. So just like with the Hindu cultures, we are entering again a more feminine era. Think left brain, right brain. Yeah, so this symbolizes the future. Then here we have a dragon crocodile. Okay, so this has actually many complexities to it. It's not as simple. And then we even have, look, we have, I'm gonna explain this because this is means many things, this journey. But we have, it doesn't, I don't know if you can see it well on the camera. We have like people going, some are going into the mouth of the crocodile dragon, and some are going directly towards the future, or at least a Yeah, because we have the golden. I didn't do this on purpose, but now since we have this um, golden color. It's sort of there is a concept of the Christ and the Antichrist, but not in the way that maybe Christians think about it, like bad and it's it's too much to explain. Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. I was gonna explain it at the end. I wrote some notes. So, first of all, the Christ concept is a universal a universal concept. So the Christ stream, the Christ consciousness is usually seen as a consciousness of enlightenment. They usually have like a golden aura. They are crowned by the sun, right? And so we have Jesus Christ. We have Ganesha in Hindu mythology, which is the baby of Mary and I'm sorry, Parvati and Shiva. Mary and Joseph have the Christ child, and then we have like Buddhas and all of that. So they will be actually physical manifestations of carrying this Christ consciousness, but this stream, and that is related to that's actually related to how our consciousness develops, which is okay. I'm not going to go into this, but it has to do with no, I can explain it here. uh, but yeah, the Christ stream is a sort of um, a state of more awareness of what we call enlightenment, right? So it's more of an enlightened era, and that would be uh, the timeline that we're supposed to enter into, the higher aspect of the Aquarian era, while the Antichrist would be something that wants us to go backwards. Okay, and I'm going to explain more because we have this backwards movement here, but what it is and what it's trying to lure us to go to, yes, enter the Aquarian era, because we cannot stop evolution in that way, but we can enter like um, a more negative, a darker or distorted aspect version of that archetype. Okay, so we will enter, no matter what, a more feminine era, a more feminine consciousness, but it will be toxic femininity, for example. Toxic, anything that, yeah, a distortion of the feminine consciousness. Remember, we both have feminine and masculine. Uh, and not, what's it called? Our psyche is both, everything is it's feminine and masculine. But in this dimension, in this world, everything is so dual. So we understand it as something that's separate from each other, but it's the same. We just place different. It's the same, but we place. We like to, yeah, whatever. So the Antichrist stream would like us to enter a more negative, okay, timeline, because then they can keep their control and so forth. But we're moving into a new archetype, new consciousness, no matter what timeline we enter. So then let me explain this, which is a bunch of different things, because you have some people going into the mouth of the crocodile. So with the crocodile dragon, I'm going to explain the dragon later. Some people have actually gone into it, and then gone out of it again. So there is a lot of in the tarot, for example, you have the Fool card. Sometimes you have like a crocodile at the bottom, where the Fool is almost like jumping into. Oi. And that is sort of it symbolizes many things, but it's sort of entering the cycle of incarnation, entering the incarnation cycles of being birthed into this dimension, right? But there's also a concept of initiation, be initiated. So you go into the belly of the crocodile, and you go through this death process, and then you come out. So there's the integration of your the facing the unconscious, integrating that, and then coming out, being rebirth. You go through sort of a death process and be rebirth. And the people who, because we are in a very special time that, um, hmm, well, that's not relevant to be honest. But anyways, there are people who have done that, and they have brought up their unconscious. They have faced their dragons. Okay, they have faced their dragon, their fears, and so on, for a long time, maybe for many lifetimes. And then, at least in this timeline, I'm gonna explain later. And they're going more straightforwardly. It's a shorter path towards this, towards their higher aspect and the future. Okay, this is one timeline. So this is a whole spectrum of people. Then there's some people who are entering this crocodile. What did I write? Yeah. So they're seemingly going backward, and they're entering the crocodile, but they are being devoured. And what I mean is, in mythology, we often have, with the crocodile, let's just focus on the crocodile. There is this, in mythology, in Egyptian, in Mayan, and yeah, in anyways, the crocodile exists in many many different mythologies around the world, and they are a symbol of both destruction and creation. We even had the father of 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 Ganesha is the masculine aspect of the process of destruction and rebirthing as well, and creation. Well, I think Kali is the feminine aspect of that, of creation and destruction and creation. But anyways, the crocodile, for example, in I like to use Egyptian mythology nowadays, and it's because the crocodile there you have both the god Seb or something like that, which is a god of fertility. If you're interested in why, you can look it up. It's very interesting. And crocodiles around the world usually have that mythology of fertility. Sometimes, like, I think it's the Mayan that from the mother crocodile the whole world emerges. Not to be taken literally. People back in the day did not take things so literally like we do now, okay? That's why we have weird thing like ancient aliens. If you have seen the show. Ugh. Anyways, they existed in a different consciousness. They understood things differently. But it's like here in the Nordic countries, when they worshipped a tree that would represent the tree of life, or the Yggdrasil tree with Odin and all that existed, the gods existed in the upper part. They weren't they didn't actually take it literally, okay? Yeah, okay, that was a side note. But so we have the fertility process, and the process of destruction with the crocodile, because the crocodile in Egyptian mythology is also the one that devours the soul that have been judged by the scale, the golden scale of Ma'at, which actually is Ma'et, which is okay. I'm not okay. Let's say Ma'at, the golden scales, where the heart was weighed against the feather, and if the heart was heavier, then that soul would, instead of passing through the underworld and so forth, they would be devoured by the crocodile. And as I mentioned before, initiates and stuff, there's this concept of uh, first destroying the old self to become uh, the old self, become aware of the unconscious, integrate that, and then come out as a new, more aware person, right? More in touch with higher aspect of yourself. But then we have the other path, what we are when a soul through many lifetimes degrades itself, go goes against their integrity, hurts others, hurts themselves, and so on, and live through a very yeah, hedonistic way, maybe. I don't want to use hedonism because then people associate that with indulging in pleasure. Well, yeah. Okay. Anyways, they have degraded themselves. They have done. They have hurt people in horrible ways, but it's like over and over and over again, to the point that their soul is so degraded, so fractured, so um that the soul is destroyed. We have it in many stories, in many cultures, many mythologies, how the soul is destroyed. And that is not punishment, but it's a balance, divine balance. It is from, um, on a universal level, we don't have punishment, is not productive. It's about balance. And but what happens to that soul, it doesn't just stop existing. I like to say, I think that there is a recycling going on. So what happens is that all of the experiences in throughout all of your lifetimes in these incarnation cycles, we usually have the snake eating its tail as the wheel of time. This cycle of incarnation go over and over and over again, but it's not never the same, right? It's like one cycle, and then you can be stuck in the same cycle, but you can go upwards as well, or like this. So you have many incarnations, and that is it's a very difficult thing to be alive, especially in being the incarnation, like to be alive in this world, right? And there's a reason for that. Basically because we can actually access our unconscious here in this form. Higher aspect of ourselves cannot. But here we are kind of in the underworld, so to speak, this dimension, the 3D. And so all of that pain and frustration and things that you went through, your soul went through the different personalities that incarnate in different lives, it was all for nothing in a way. So in that sense, it is a bit of a punishment, but it's not a punishment, but it's a result of, it's a consequence of how the soul chose to conduct itself. Okay, so if you think that people don't, you know, bad people that do bad things, so how there some are never judged. They are, um, that's not true. But anyway, the souls get recycled. So all of the progress that they have done is like the soul gets recycled and they start all over again in the most basic consciousness. So it becomes a lot. So it's even if they're um, so it becomes like this longer journey again through through the incarnation and to achieve a to pull yourself up, to pull your consciousness up and to develop. So we have I wrote every path leads to Rome. So even though instead of going this way, they're actually going that way. And remember that this is flipped, so this is actually going counterclockwise. So they're going backwards in that sense. But in the end, they still reach here. So how? Well, there's also this concept of, yeah, there is okay, let me just regroup. I have like 10 things at the same time that when they come out, it's very difficult for me to speak like this. That's why I usually write a lot and then I can like have a red thread. So I'm trying to not jump in between all of the different things I have coming in my head. Oh, okay. Yes, there is this concept of when we're entering the new cycle, the Aquarian cycle, and the Aquarian consciousness. Um, People talk about it's been very washed out, very, especially in the New Age and stuff like that. Well, let's talk about things like the Grand Awakening, and how my perspective, it's like when we enter the cycle of Aquarius, everyone will become enlightened beings, and the consciousness will rise, like the collective consciousness, because everyone's individual consciousness, they have started to, you know, to heighten their awareness. But they're thinking very like materialistically, like 3D dimension, like not no they're thinking like very linear. Well, in fact, you have to, for me it's like this, because I've actually experienced myself in other I've been visiting myself in other timelines. So I don't only travel through the astral, I can actually visit. Okay, that has nothing to do with this reading, but okay, what I want to say is that this reality, imagine yourself in a, in carnivals and stuff like that, you have this house of mirrors sometimes. So it's all mirrors, and then you see like hundreds of versions of you in that mirror, and other hundreds and thousands of versions of you in that mirror, right? And hundreds over here and here, and it's like thousands and thousands and thousands of versions of you. Well, that is like um different, that is all of those are think of that as different timelines of this reality. where you make a different choice. Okay, so there are probably an endless amount of a parallel timelines of this reality. So you exist on many different realities. This you, me, but you make different choices, and humanity makes different choices. The collective makes different choices throughout all of those different timelines. But all of those, it's almost like one mirror that has been fractured into many small mirrors. So all of those timelines is part of one whole. It's part of one whole. It's part of the whole. So so in one timeline, so it's not like everyone's consciousness is going to be enlightened or whatever in this timeline, in this reality. It's more like some people in this timeline are, right, they are going this path. They are they are they have gone, they have done the work, they have truly like become conscious of their unconscious aspect, integrating that and start to integrate the higher aspects, right? They're going straight to this timeline of a higher aspect of Korean. And then other people in this timeline are going a longer path, or they are loose. And I'm not saying that all of them are devoured, but some are losing themselves for a while in the same cycle until they get unstuck in a way. But in another timeline, in another timeline of the humanity, I visited a couple of them, and one is maybe two. I'm over exaggerating, but one was quite shocking because it is a timeline where humanity, the great, like, they devolved basically, and they became the only way that they could survive was through a very through a sort of almost like insect like form, like parasitically. So it was, oh, I have to do a video about this, but the humanity as a whole, they chose to go against what is natural, against the flows, ebbs and flows of everything in existence. Okay. So you can say that they chose the Antichrist path. I'm gonna talk more about what the Antichrist right now represents, in what form it presents itself in the world. So in that timeline, I was, it was me, but I was a very different person, and it was quite upsetting. I felt so sorry for myself, for that aspect of myself. It was quite a terrifying existence. Yeah, I want to do someday a video just about that, those experiences that I had, what I saw. But in this timeline, so that was just one time. But in this timeline, me, I've been doing the work or whatever. uh, so it is the different choices of of all the fractured, all the different realities, which is part of the whole. That is how we raise our consciousness and the consciousness of the planet, right? Because the planet, all of the planets are a living thing. It has multi-dimensional consciousness. But from a third dimensional consciousness, from a third dimensional perspective, we see it's a very physical one. So we see this Earth like we see it, and we see Mars as we see it, and we see the sun as just this ball of fire, and in the third dimension realm, that is all it is. But there are many dimensions and many levels of existence. And as your consciousness expands, you start to integrate how you start to experience and be like in this consciousness in 3D, we can only experience like 5% or even less. I think something like 3% of reality of the whole. And as your okay, that is also a whole video about what intuitive and psychic abilities actually is. It is not magic, okay? It's very natural. But anyway, so where was I? Yes. So this is humanity, and it's a spectrum, and we're making different choices. We have our own, yeah, and it's not about comparing yourself to someone else. Like we make different choices, okay? But all paths eventually lead to Rome, basically. Even if you are stuck here, or you go, eventually you will reach in some timeline that. But what I wanted to talk about as well is, mm, let me see. I wrote something here. Okay, so here I have the Uroboros, so the snake biting its tail. I prefer call it Midgårdsormen, which is the in Nordic mythology. It is the snake that eats its tail, but it's outside Midgård, which is the if you've seen the if you know about Thor and Loki and Freya and maybe you've seen the Hollywood movies, Thor and stuff. So basically Midgård is this, it's no Midgård. Yeah, Midgård where the, oh my god, how do I do not remember this? In here in Northern mythology, it's basically where the gods, Midgård. Oh, it's supposed to be where the humans live. And then what's it called in English? Midgård. And as you know, that we have here, we have like the mythology of the great tree, and then on the top you have Odin, and under the earth you have like the snakes eating the roots, and you have Hel. It's actually a goddess, Hel in Swedish, Hel, and Midgård, and you have the snake. Yeah, that is where humans and the gods and the giants live outside of that. But anyway, it's the great sea serpent that eats its tail. Midgårdsson. What a tangent! I'm so sorry. But anyway, the Uroboros, that is the which we see here. Although you see it as it's supposed to, like it's supposed to be counterclockwise here, and here I did the drawing so that it wasn't counterclockwise. So this is representing going backwards. But I wrote, yeah, because we have the spectrum here. So I wrote, we are at the tail end, of the, yeah, we're at the tail end of the old cycle, and we have reached, like, and through a lot of wisdom, we're going into the new one. Yeah, just let's not go backwards. Yeah, because right now we're having different forces fighting for our consciousness. Okay, and that is with the Christ and Antichrist forces. So they are forces fighting for our consciousness, the consciousness of the collective. So whether in, at least in this reality, whether this, in this reality, this world, not in another timeline, in this reality, whether we go towards the path where we're supposed to go, the more like the enlightened era of the Aquarian consciousness, the natural path, the natural evolution of our consciousness, or we go towards an unnatural aspect, an unnatural path of our evolution. We get devoured by the crocodile. We go through a dark, we enter a dark cycle of the Aquarian archetype, a dark cycle of the feminine consciousness. You can see that's two main timelines, and from that, of course, we have like millions of different how that. But anyway, so we have the Antichrist Christ consciousness. We even have a dead whale here representing that this is the way backwards. Like this is the way, it's a whale skeleton. And what I mean about the yeah, so they're fighting for the collective, for depending on what the majority chooses individually, that becomes the future that we choose, where we align ourselves, and so it's evolution or anti-evolution, the devolving of our human species. So the forces that we have represented as a dragon or as a crocodile is the transhumanistic movement, which is not trans. Okay, what I mean about transhumanism is about the merging of the human being, the organic human, with technology, and believing that that is how we will evolve. That is evolution. Um, so and the what's it called? The distortion and the of the new technologies, the distortion of AI technologies as a control method, because the Aquarian consciousness, the ideas that we're starting receiving, it has to do with technologies, but there are different types. Okay, and one of the ideas that are very dangerous is the belief that we should merge yourself with with machines, and to also go into more virtual realities, and that is and to believe that is the future of human being, to go a more Martian path. Mars, okay? No, Mars, if you understand what I'm saying, is not the path forward, okay? Occupy Mars, my ass. Okay. Now, with the Mars thing, you have to go into the occult history of the human being and the cosmic history. But anyways, we're also the Martian archetype is much more of a masculine archetype, and we are not going towards a man. We're going to a feminine archetype. But even this dragon sometimes is called this. The dragon is transhumanism and so forth, and like very Yeah. um, and all that that entails. uh, oh, bioengineering, is that the right word? Anyways, but the dragon is sometimes also represented as the dragons are not there are aspects of the dragons that are darker, and there are aspects that are higher aspects. So sometimes you have, like, in Christian mythology, you have like mythology in Christian wherever, you have the archangel Michael. He rides a dragon, he has conquered his dragon, and he's fighting. Sometimes you see with a spear, with a sword, fighting like a dragon here, and that would be the Antichrist movement. And um, Rudolf Steiner called it the Ariman, and how the Ariman, he was a mystic, um, among other things. Quite a Renaissance man. But anyways, he saw it as yeah, he and many other mystics expressed their concerns about the future, about how things that I usually say that things that are supposed to be for us, inventions, are used in a very dark way. So they would warn us also about, even like vaccines are an amazing thing, right? But when modern medicine, but when there are forces that want to make money off of that, infiltrate certain aspect of that, we know it with the medical industry and stuff, then it's not so pure. Then it can also, yeah, whatever. But but the Ariman, the Antichrist, would be expressing itself through different ideas and people. Not as in people are the Antichrist, but we receive different ideas, right? We have, or we can take an idea and distort it and use it for a sort of to control people and use people. And the transhumanistic movements, the cyborgism and all of that, like, let's just say we have had timelines where we have already chosen the wrong path. There are other, okay, this is too out there, I'm not going to but it is the path of devolution, and those ideas that we are natural cyborgs, and that it is a sort of leveling up of the human being, is being normalized through different avenues and through media, even like children's movies. It's been going on for a while, and there's so much to it. It's even bigger than that, but and that is not, I can't, it doesn't fit into the video, but it's sort of that. We're being tempted, we're being, yeah, that is the part of the sort of more negative forces that are sort of the Sith Lords, okay? Now, but that they're sort of fighting for our consciousness. So depending on what we agree to do and accept, that is what we choose, the path forward that we choose, the future that we choose. And remember, it's always they have to infiltrate the unconscious, because the unconscious is what it's not our conscious ego that makes choices. The choices that it makes is based on the unconscious. So some are sort of being tricked and going willingly into this timeline. So that is why we have this spectrum here. It's like a tug of war right now for consciousness. But in the end, all okay, all paths lead to Rome. No, but it's like, even the shadow, the darkness, and all of that, it serves a purpose, and it serves a purpose in the end to find the to find the light, and to find the, it is through the underworld, the darkness, that we have the ability to find this sort of light that pulls us up. And also, in when we have a shift in consciousness, that also it's like a judgment day, a doomsday, but it's not really a doomsday. It's more like a judgment and apocalypse. Like, and what that means is not, it's not the end of the world. It's more like it's the end of an old cycle and the beginning of a new. And what happens there is that everything that have been buried under the ground, all of the shadows of the world, of the collective, the things that don't work in our structures, if we talk about more of a macro level, and also in our own lives, our shadows are being brought up, because those shadows are also from the old cycle, or in this case the Piscean cycle. We have been integrated that shadow, the unconscious of that archetype. Like all of that needs to be resolved, sort of, so that we can enter, as we enter the new one, something like that. But it shows us, it's in our faces, okay? It shows us what isn't working in all levels of society, as well as in all levels of our own life and our own psyche. So it feels like all of a sudden, the world becomes a more chaotic place. It's more. It feels like there's more darkness in the world, and the future seems scary, right? It doesn't seem bright, but that is not the reality. Is that it was always there, but now we can see it, so we can change it. We can work through it, whether it's sorrow, or whether it's a governmental structure that doesn't work, a culture structure, on all levels. And then there are negative forces that use that, this sort of in between time is a perfect time for them to sort of make us feel like the future is dark. And so they come up with solutions and things that will free us. The devil is sweet, my friend. This is even like, I don't know, like Facebook being calling themselves Meta, and creating a meta space. Like living more in sort of a virtual reality where we actually uh don't really own, as we're not grounded in this existence. We're always, how we say, how some people have their heads in the clouds, and that is not negative. If you're pulling down something and making it real, you're pulling down true creativity and imagination, an idea, and creating it here. Even like getting an idea for how to, I don't know, cure something, to create it, but if you have your heads in the clouds and you're always somewhere else, that is where it's constantly being in sort of a virtual reality. And I wonder, why are there so, what kind of future are trying to create for us? When you see how much they're pushing this, let's exist in other realities, in a deeper sort of illusion. And I'm not against virtual realities and games and all of that. It's really cool. Or the internet. I love technology. But it's when it becomes Luciferian. No, I don't want to say Luciferian, because Lucifer was almost like hedonistic, but that is not the word. We overindulge and we lose ourselves in that. and we actually don't gain. We cannot gain. We don't gain anything from that. It stops us in our development. Um, so I wonder. I'm trying to create something that, like, well, yeah, I know. Okay. Usually people escape to those worlds, and it's good to get if you do it just recreation, but living there, okay? Like in the Matrix, it's not well, they feed on us, you know. um, it's not ideal. Um, yeah, that is like we have that is the we're going to backwards. That is a dead whale carcass. That is not life, okay? Whew. But they're fighting. They're fighting for our consciousness right now. That one. That's all. Oh, oh, we're long reading. I hope anything of this makes sense and I didn't go on too many tangents. Oh, yeah, I was getting a song that it's the end of the world, don't they know it's the end of the world? It goes, why does the world keep on? Why does the world on? It's a love song, but in this case, it's more like it feels basically the world doesn't end, it just feels like that. Or, anyways, keep being your imperfectly perfect self. Keep being imperfectly perfect. I will remember to do the same. I hope to see you back here. Bye bye. But that is not a true perspective. We call, what should I call it? The right perception. It's a distorted perception. And also, this is a little bit about the mainstream environmental movement, which I'm also doing a video about. Because just because you care about the environment doesn't mean that your methods are correct. And the mainstream environmental movement has a very fatalistic sort of view of the world, but also the strategy that they're using, which is fear, unfortunately. I'm going to speak about a little bit um, what kind of future, what kind of timeline you create and you choose when you choose the tactic that they're using, that they think they're using for good. So there are aspects of the mainstream environmental movement, environmentalism, that I am very critical of. And it's it is constructive criticism, okay? Constructive criticism. And I have coconut oil in my hair, that's why. They have to wash out, okay? If it looks a bit yeah. But it's constructive criticism. So I'm not making fun of anyone or talking down to anyone. I'm not interested in that. But yeah, there's a lot of seemingly positive forces or people who mean good but are actually creating a sort of. That's why I say the devil is sweet, the devil is tempting. The devil has the best lies. Okay. Also, like this feels easier, it feels better, it feels much easier, it seems like a solution a lot of time. This path, or the path of going within truly and all of that, doing the work, so to speak, facing the unconscious and all of that, in whatever way it manifests into the world, it's not always the easiest. It's not an easy path. So this feels better. Better. So it's easy to get sucked into this. The other, the a path of the evolution. This might, so it's easier. It's fun. It's it might seem cooler while going through the mud. Flower, becoming a lotus flower from the mud is not a it's not an easy process. Becoming a rose is not an easy process. Being a concrete flower is not easy, okay? mm. Yeah, okay. Now it's truly the end. Bye bye.